So for everyone who's watching or just joining, we're just going to wait another minute or so. We have a few more folks that are joining us, and then we'll get started.
Zoom recording is on. We are also live streaming on YouTube.
And I just muted everyone just so we don't have any background noise for the time being.
Hello, Sandro.
So we're just going to keep everyone on mute for the time being, and we'll get started in just about a minute or two. Okay, it does look like we have a good quorum. Jesus, it looks like we're recording and we're live. So do you mind if I get started?
By all means.
Okay, so welcome everyone. I am Sandro Sherrod. I am the chair of Committee Board 6's Land Use and Waterfront Committee. This is our May 7th meeting of 2020. We will be calling this meeting to order now at 6:33 p.m. And we're going to be joined tonight by our district manager, Jesus Perez. Thank you, Jesus. For the members of the public, you can raise any questions or comments that you have through the question and answer feature in Zoom. If there's time following the committee's discussion, we're going to field questions from the public, but we're going to start with our committee members. So we are now recording and streaming through YouTube, but I think, do we have anyone actually who had volunteered? If you can raise your hand to take minutes. I don't recall if we had someone volunteer. I think we might have not had anyone.
No one volunteered in advance.
Okay, does anyone want to volunteer tonight? You can raise your hand if you have your camera on, or you can select participants and raise your hand that way electronically. Anyone? This is a good opportunity to show how great you are as committee members for everyone who's participating remotely. Anyone who wants to volunteer? Kathy, do you want to do your inaugural meeting and volunteer to do minutes one last time? I can't hear you. I see a smile, so I'm going to assume that means yes.
Yes.
Is that a yes?
I'll do it.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
And so that gives me a good segue.
I need details later from Jesus of who all is speaking, blah, blah. Okay.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Sure.
We're going to have the recording as well as we'll have everyone's name listed, so that'll make it a little easier than normal. And so thank you, Kathy. And this is actually a good segue for those of you who've been on the committee or the board for a while would know Kathy Thompson was a wonderful member and she has now returned as a public member. So thank you, Kathy, for stepping up and assisting in taking the minutes this evening. So with that, I think we're going to switch and take attendance. Jesus, are you going to do the roll call?
Sure. Just give me 2 seconds.
Sure.
All right. I will call your name and you will please, when I do, unmute yourself and answer present. And then at the end of this, I will announce whether we have a quorum present. All right. Jim Collins. Jim Collins, please unmute yourself.
Here.
Okay, thank you. Adam Hartke.
Here.
Kathleen Kelly.
Here.
Kavitha Matthew,
Here.
Sandy McKee,
Here.
Wells Magali,
Here.
Jean Santoro, Jean Santoro. Oh, there
I
he
can
is.
see him mouthing. I don't hear him, but I can see him mouthing here. He might have an
Okay.
audio problem.
All right, Larry Shire,
Here.
Ann Seligman,
Here.
Lou Sapersky, I see him there, Lou
I
Sapersky.
see him.
All right. Sandro Sherrod is here.
Here.
Letty Simon,
By the way, I'm due to take minutes in June.
Wonderful. Thank you.
So
and Kathy Thompson.
Here.
And we have a quorum.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Jesus. So we had circulated the agenda rather for tonight's meeting ahead of time. They were posted online on our website. I think we're going to share that in a second.
There it
Two.
is.
There we go. Thank you. So if there's no corrections to the agenda, can we consider the agenda adopted? If you can actually we'll take a vote on it. So we're going to do the virtual raise hands. So you can just click under the participants window. You can click the raise hand for committee members to vote in favor of the agenda. Now would be a good time. Okay. You don't have to unmute to do it. Okay. I see.
No.
I'd like to amend the agenda.
Okay, Lou, what do you have?
I'd like to add the Greenway to the agenda and
Okay.
the helicopter task force.
Okay, we'll talk about that under old business. Okay, but people seem to be otherwise good with it, so let's move forward on the agenda. All right, so that's adopted. Thank you, Lou. Thank you, everyone. So the minutes for February 24th were circulated to the committee members ahead of time. So if there are if there's no objection, we will adopt the minutes. Committee members, you can raise your hand actually to indicate. Otherwise, I'm going to lower your hands for a second. Okay. So right now, if there are any objections to adopting, could you just raise your hand? The minutes. Okay, I don't see any objections. Okay, great. So we'll consider them adopted. All right. So we now just going to go over some rules that we've been using for the various committee board meetings that have been online. So properly, you have heard these before, but in order to conduct an efficient meeting, we're going to observe these rules and try to keep the same sort of decorum that we would have if we were an in-person meeting. So no one will be speaking until they're granted the floor from the chair, in this case me. We're going to ask the committee members if they have a question about committee business or wish to make a motion. They virtually raise their hand. If you have trouble doing that, you can physically raise your hand. If you have a camera on, I'll be able to see that. Please wait until I call on you. If you have trouble finding the raise hand function, you click on the participants tab that's on maybe on the bottom there. Sometimes it's on the top, but normally it's on the bottom. And then you'll see raise hand on that bottom right of the participants list. So that'll raise your hand and I'll be able to lower it also by clicking there. If you have any technical difficulties, you can use the chat icon and relay your difficulty. I think Jesus will be able to address that, but we're not going to be taking any sort of business or official discussion from the committee through chat. That's just for any sort of support. And when a committee member is given the floor to speak, I will identify them and we're going to ask that you unmute yourselves. We're going to try to keep everyone on mute because everyone might have some background noise and we don't want to be disruptive to the meeting. So please police yourself and keep yourself on mute when you're done speaking. So we are required by the executive order to create a verbatim transcript of this meeting. So please keep your questions and comments succinct and germane to the discussion so that it's not excessive for those who have to assist with that. And so with that, we'll move on to our formal agenda. So the first item that we had on our agenda was the transit easement certification application for 609 2nd Avenue. And I believe we have someone here to speak to that. I don't remember who.
Yes, we do.
Is that Mr.
We have.
Hello.
Hello,
Hello, I'm Justin Rostoff. I'm here as the attorney for
Rostov. Okay,
developers. Yes.
welcome.
Thank you. When you're ready.
Oh, sure, whenever you're ready.
Okay. Let me deal with this now and just do the share screen. So hold with me. It says I am unable to share my screen. Host has disabled.
1 second.
We'll take care of it.
Try it again.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Okay, folks.
We can see it.
Great. Okay. So thank you very much for giving us time and fitting us into your community board meeting tonight, allowing us the opportunity to present. My name is Justin Rostoff. I'm an attorney at Klein Slowick, and I am presenting to you today our proposed plan for a 2nd Avenue subway entrance on behalf of my client's property, which is located on 609 2nd Avenue. Here on behalf of ownership as well is David Marome of the Horizon Group and Flat LG. He is the owner on behalf of ownership, as well as Brian Hamburger of the Horizon Group, who is Senior Director in Project Management. A summary of where we have been to date and why we are here. My client's development site is located in a special transit land use district along 2nd Avenue. This special district's goal is to minimize conflict between sidewalk congestion and access to underground transit systems, specifically here, the proposed 2nd Avenue subway. We were last in front of the Land Use Committee of Community Board 6 on September 29th, and since we have been here last and we heard your suggestions and input, we have worked with the Metropolitan Transportation Authority for what has now been roughly 7 months to design and incorporate a subway entrance into our property and our development site, as we discussed at the last community board meeting we participated in. Using the feedback we got at that community board, our design has been reviewed and approved by the MTA for a double elevator, ADA compliant entrance to the 2nd Avenue subway, which again will be located on my client's property. After MTA's approval, we then submitted the design to the Department of City Planning, who similarly approved the final application and the design of the proposed subway entrance. On April 16th, City Planning formally referred our application and subway design to this Community Board 6 for your review and comment of the subway design. So now to move on to what we have in mind. As you can see here from the zoning map, 8D in New York City, our development site is located right in this shaded area, which is the Special Transit Land Use District. More specifically, in the Special District, our development site spans 4 tax lots on 2nd Avenue between East 33rd and East 34th. It is tax lots 29, 30, 31, and 32. All again within that shaded special district. This is a depiction of the site today, as you all may recognize. The 4 tax lots are vacant land, ready to be developed, and perfect to have a design for the subway entrance as you all raised in September. So this lot frontage equates to these 4 lots right here. In September, when we originally came, we proposed a development design of a mixed-use 7-story building. On the ground floor, we originally had roughly 50% of retail space. This would be the southern portion of our lot, closest to 33rd Street. And then another 50% of the ground floor space was a lobby to the residential condominiums right above. After we met with you in September and heard your desire and suggestions for a subway entrance, working with MTA, we have come up with a new design, which we think is appropriate to what you have suggested in your feedback. And this is our new design. As you can see, we still have a 7-story mixed-use building. However, on the first floor, for roughly 28 feet, there's going to be a subway entrance right at sidewalk level. Here, there's going to be an elevator pit leading down to the 2nd Avenue subway station and platform, accessible by sidewalk traffic and pedestrians. The first floor residential lobby will stay. And then in between the subway entrance and the first floor residential lobby will be just a smaller retail space. If we look at them together to see where we were and where we have come, the original design was just a first floor retail and first floor residential lobby, as opposed to now we have the subway entrance, easily accessible for all patrons, incorporating still a ground floor retail, ground floor residential lobby. To show further the depth and the dimensions of this easement, which will be the subway entrance, you can see here. We saw the looking face on of the building, but now if we take an aerial view, the entrance is going to be roughly 40 feet into our building, which will be a walkway to the elevators, which you can see here. Access, walking into the elevator pit. Elevators will take you down to the subway platform, accessible to the subway entrance. Another great 3-dimensional depiction of what will be the subway entrance you can see here on the southern portion of our property, as we've shown, where the retail space once was, is now going to be the elevator subway entrance. Patrons can walk within. Right here, they will be able to access one of the 2 elevators to take it down into the subgrade 2nd Avenue subway station. This 3-dimensional axonometric picture brings all of the new design of the subway entrance together and really shows what we envision and what MTA envisions to be the location and the access of the 2nd Avenue subway station on this property. And with that, we have only come here due to the insight and the feedback of this Community Board 6. And we'd like to thank you and every one of your members and members of the public who have contributed thus far. Please ask us any questions you may have, and myself, David, or Brian are happy to answer.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I'm going to ask if we can, thank you very much, Mr. Rostov. So if the community members have a question, please raise your hand digitally. I see a couple of hands go up before I call on anyone. Could I just ask you the new retail space, what is the footprint of that, the square footage of that?
I would like to relay that to either David or Brian, who may have the more specific dimensions.
Okay, can either of you unmute and answer? David?
Hi, my name is David Maron. I wasn't prepared exactly for that question. I can reference it and respond later on, but it's much smaller than what we have. It's approximately 45% that what we had before in the retail. And
And that's
in-
the grayed area that's shaded in, the darker gray that's shaded in here? I'm not
Correct.
sure.
And the back, what we'll be able to use, it will be the back of where the easement, the Mta easement, somehow will stay as a retail. If we'll be able to combine it and use it together with the retail in the front that was left, that'll be okay. I think the idea in the beginning was like 2,800 square feet total. If we take in the 1,200 square feet, it's leaving us with 1,600 with the total, with the back of the Mta, which I'm not sure if will be usable, but we'll try to use it. If not, it will be used for the building amenity.
Okay, so all right, I'm going to start calling on committee members. So I'm going to start with Anne and then Larry and then Jim and then Lou. So I'm just going to let you unmute yourselves. Okay, go ahead, Anne.
So my question is about escalators versus elevators. Elevators just break down all the time. And I don't really know how deep this space is. I know that you can do a pretty sharp rake of an escalator, and I'm just curious whether that was an option that was considered. I think about the escalator at 42nd Street that goes directly from street level to just above the 7 platform. And I doubt that's going to be deep. That's deeper than this one is going to be. And, you know, it's a concern. As elevators break down all the time and don't have the carrying capacity. I see you rolling your eyes, Sandro.
No, you're absolutely right. No, thank you.
Okay. Can I respond to that?
Sure.
Hi. We try to look into the escalator, but don't forget that the Mta is taking the escalator and putting it on 34th Street. This elevator is more to act for the ADA that they need to bring. The escalator is not something that it can be used by the ADA, and that's where they were thinking more about the elevator for the ADA. They have,
So there'll be an escalator across the street, basically.
not across the street, on the same street, on the, if you look at the west side, southwest corner of 34th Street, if you look at the original
Where the Clover
design,
Deli is, I believe.
yeah.
Oh, so just down the block.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. That answers the question.
If you look at the design that was in the beginning, years and years ago, designed for the Mta, what they were going to do, it was always the intent to be taking that corner lot and to use it as the entrance for the subway and to have the elevator across the street.
Right.
Now, I think they moved the elevator into our building and maybe we used across the street for something else, but they kept the option to have the elevator in our building and to have the easement there.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. And then I think Larry was next.
Thank you. I just had to unmute.
Yep.
Who was it who met with the MTA and can discuss the conference you had where you came to that agreement?
Who on behalf of ownership here today, or who on behalf of the MTA? I'm sorry.
On behalf of the ownership.
All three of us were there. David, who else from your team joined?
It was our attorney, Mr. Rostov, myself, David Marome, and we had Brian Hamburger for our team, and we had another ownership. It was a big group of people that we met, and we met a few times to go through the plans and to review it.
And do you recall who represented the MTA?
Justin, do you have the name?
Yes, sure. It was Helene Sink, as well as Jonathan Alweiss as their attorney, and Kachi Chung. And again, as David mentioned, this was a group of, I think there may have been upwards of 10 people there, 10 to 12 people. So the other two names, there were other two engineers there. But I know that it was Kachi Chung, Helene Sink, and then Jonathan Alweiss.
Okay, and you do recall that the context of these transit easements were they were designed to provide access from all four corners of this very busy intersection. And I'm glad you mentioned the location of the proposed escalator. And is there anything else with regard to this side of the street, this southwest corner, that you can share that might be illuminating to us as we try to visualize, although we don't have any sketches from that meeting?
I think if we get, Justin, if you can try to show what is the MTA study. On the MTA study, you can see exactly on each corner what they were planning to do. I don't know if you can do it.
I can do, I would like to, I'm going to have to stop sharing my screen and then I can get it.
Okay.
Is my screen off? Because then I will go on to the.
Yep. Yeah, it is.
Okay.
In this moment, while we're waiting, I can say that the MTA worked very close to us, and they understood that it was a small mistake by them approving before the community board, and they really helped us a lot by expediting the process. Instead of taking a year and a half, they went through the engineering and they helped us a lot with the expediting the timing. And they did a good job with that. And even I'm not happy to slow my progress in 7 months, but I was very happy with them doing what they did for us. And it was a good feeling, showing that the MTA can work with the people and work with the developer. And it was a nice suggestion from them. And they did it very nice and very well. They respond in some time with a drawing 2-3 days after we gave them our drawing, because it was back and forth. We had to move columns, we had to move space in our building to accommodate the space that they need. And coming from all that, it took a long time between our engineers and their engineers, but to give them the credit, they did come back every time in a very short time period to give us the answer, what we needed to, what we need to do next step. And it was amazing. It was really nice to see that it can happen.
Well, I'm curious if they discussed with you or you discussed with them how the circulation is going to work. The pedestrian circulation, people coming from the elevators where you are, people coming down from the escalators on the corner. Was that part of the back and forth?
No, we didn't discuss it at all. Or what I know that this elevator will come down to the platform. It will not be. I'm not exactly even know where exactly in the platform it comes, but I know that it's a little bit separate from the entrance, and I'm not sure how they collect their fee and Already I know that the elevator, it's a little bit further from the entrance that they are planning, and we'll see it in a few seconds when Justin will show you.
Yes, I am looking for it. There were just a few studies, so I apologize for the hold.
Well, let me
Because
ask
there are
just,
different images.
let me just ask one other kind of an appearance question, and this relates to the experience of people who will be waiting for the escalator, I mean, for the elevator on the street. Will there be any kind of an overhang, something that would protect someone from the rain at least a little bit while one is waiting for the escalator, the elevator door to open, and also might protect pedestrians from icicles that might form on the roof line that could drop down. And we've seen that in other transit easements as being a problem. So thinking of protection.
The elevator, if you remember, and Justin maybe will show again, the drawing, the elevator are set in. You have a whole lobby that you walk into the building. It's, I want to say.
It's at the rear of the lobby, yeah.
Yeah, if you have 40 feet, if the whole easement is 40 feet, the elevator is not more than 7-8 feet, or maybe let's call it 10 feet for argument's sake. Then you do have like a 30 feet of a lobby in between the street, the building facade to the elevator.
Well, since there's this recessed area, will you or the transit authority be responsible for policing the area?
The MTA will be responsible for anything to do with that space.
Responsibility goes to the transportation authority in terms of upkeep, maintenance, all overhead and operation. Once this becomes a subway entrance, is the responsibility in the transportation authority. Once they execute their right to make this a subway entrance.
Okay,
and then,
so
as
somebody
you can see here,
spills
this is where.
Okay, I understand. So if somebody spills a bottle of water and it's below freezing, it becomes icy, it's their liability.
Correct.
Now, I would like to show the study.
Sure, please.
Thank you. Thank you.
And while you're pulling that up, so before we get the answer from that, someone sent me a weird message and I couldn't figure out who sent it or how it was sent to me, but someone was asking how they raise their hand. So to raise your hand, you're going to click on the little participants button on the bottom of the screen, and that'll pop up a list of participants. Your name should be on it. On the bottom right of that, you should have a raise hand button.
You see it?
Okay. Sorry, just wanted to get that out of the way.
Sandro, can you see my screen now? Just want to.
Yep, I can. Sure. Second Avenue Subway Station entrance. Yep.
This is what was planned originally of where the entrances would be. As you can see, this is Second Avenue 4th. We're talking about right here. And then they were able to add a new subway station, which we're talking about, which will be around right here is our lot. This is where our proposed subway entrance will go.
Thank you for showing us this. This is very helpful.
And I take it that those percentages are percentages of, I guess, the common entry points and what they're looking at in terms of density of ingest into the area.
Yeah.
So as you point out, that's going to have to be re-engineered to actually extend for that elevator, lower elevator lobby outside the fare collection area. Okay.
And after I'm happy to apply these studies for the community board as well, just to have on file.
Okay, wonderful. You can send that to the board office or to Jesus, and we'll add that to the available information afterwards. Thank you, Larry. So let's move. I believe next was Jim, and he'll be followed by Lou. And then we'll have Kathleen follow them.
Good evening, Mr. Rostoff, Mr. Marum. I have two questions. First, I apologize. I don't recollect your prior appearance before the community board, and so perhaps I'm covering old ground. My question, though, is given that you're building the building the same size before and after your addition of a subway, of the elevators and the subway access, are you utilizing the transit bonus at all? Or are you planning to, or is this with the transit bonus? Can you just delve into that a bit? And the second question is, given that the 2nd Avenue subway isn't to be built until probably sometime at the end of this century, what is your plan to utilize the space that had been retail that will be an elevator once the 2nd Avenue subway is actually built? What do you intend to utilize in that space?
Yes, we are trying to use it's approximately 1,200 square feet and move it to above and use it somewhere. We are going, matter of fact, we have an expediter that's working right now with DOB to try to see where exactly it will be, because we have 2 zoning lots, we have to see where can we accommodate and put it, and they are putting an application for the city to see with the building department to talk to the commissioner to see how we're going to utilize it.
Utilize the transit bonus.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not transit. They're basically taking 1,200 square feet for me that I will not be able to sell it or do anything with that. I just answering the second question. Until they take the easement, until that time, they let me use it and use the retail for whatever I want to do. And the way they, in the agreement that we have, they have to notify me 6 months in advance that I have to vacate the space. And the whole design of the space, what they call it a drop, that they can cut the floor and not doing anything with the engineering, doing anything to our building. That's why the whole building had to be redesigned and to figure how we're going to have that flow coming out without affecting our structure of the building. And they did it, our engineers sat with them and did that. But until they are taking the easement, yes, we are going to have a retail there. And the minute that they take it, it's basically theirs, their responsibility. And hopefully they will maintain it to the best that they can do.
Okay, very well. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Jim. Lou? Lou, you're still muted.
Okay. This is what is known as an island platform. And I'm sort of curious as to why there weren't stairs included in the design to start with. Hello?
Yes.
Yep, we heard you.
This 2nd Avenue subway station we have now, as David mentioned earlier, is directly in response to the cities and metropolitan transportation authority's recent study that called for an addition of elevator ADA compliant subway entrances. So this is meeting the MTA's desire to add ADA compliant subway, elevator subway entrances throughout the city.
Lou, you're muted again.
I'm supposed to be unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Now you're muted again.
All right.
Now you're not muted.
Okay. I'm unmuted. There is an escalator on the sidewalk at 34th and 2nd, as I understand it, that serves this platform.
Yes, I believe so. The entry
Is-
for the escalator will be on the 34th Street, south north. But that again, we have to depend on the study that Justin is showing you guys. It's not something that we were involved in any design or I have any information, but the intent is that the main entrance will be on the 34th Street.
Is there a possibility that we could invite the MTA to come in because they may have, and to review this with us, because they may have some comments and some explanatory material that may clarify some of the considerations that go into this station?
Was that directed at me, Lou?
Yeah. I mean, it's very helpful to
I
have.
can't. I
very
can't
helpful.
schedule for MTA.
But we can invite them to a meeting to discuss this also, because as it is, we're getting one presentation, and there may be additional points that ought to be raised and examined about the design and utility of this station.
We can, Lou, we can invite them, or we can send some comments to them as well to see if they can provide some feedback.
I think that inviting them would probably be a good thing. This is a fairly serious project, and I'm somewhat more optimistic than some about when this is going to happen. I don't think it's going to be the end of this century. I think it's going to be somewhat sooner. So I was thinking that perhaps inviting the MTA in to discuss this might be helpful. Kathy wants to know if they've already approved it, but they discussed it with the developer and not with the community board.
The discussion
Yeah, so
was
the MTA has approved this design.
Yeah.
That is the extent of how we were able to submit our final land use application to the Department of City Planning, who has reviewed this design and has approved our application, which is why it is now referred to the community board here for review and comment to be submitted back to City Planning by May 20th.
Oh, so there's a timeline on this.
Yes, the community board 6's comments on the design must be submitted back to the community, city planning rather, excuse me, if any, by May 20th, which is in the April 16th letter, referral letter sent by city planning to this community board.
Yeah, and I think we circulated that as well to the committee, but so the hope would be that we provide any written comments after the full board meeting.
I don't remember having, I don't remember having seen that letter.
And Sandro, if it's helpful, we do have a representative from Department of City Planning present.
Oh, good.
Tonight.
Oh, good. I don't. Oh, what? Who? I don't see them on the list.
He's in the attendees. Scott Williamson.
Oh, Scott. Okay. I don't know if Scott wants to add anything. We can add him.
Hello, Scott. Would you like to add anything?
Hey, can
Scott,
you hear me?
Yep, we can.
Okay. So I'm sorry if I'm following the question correctly. You're wanting to get the MTA involved in your deliberation on the application?
Yeah, part of the background is that when the Second Avenue subway was first proposed in its revised form, Board 6 outlined where it wanted stations, and it called for certain criteria. I'd like to have the MTAs, and when this proposal first came forward, we made it clear that the station was important to us. I'd like to have the MTA describe how this proposal meets the criteria that the board established at the time. Thank you.
So,
The letter is being displayed now.
So if I can just sort of, I guess, describe the extent of our interactions with the MTA on this, they sort of have a parallel process to the point that this is called a joint certification. And that is required of properties that exist in the special transit land use district. Now, we, as the Department of City Planning, we receive the drawings from the applicant that have been the result of negotiations with the MTA. Exactly what goes into those, desires of the MTA, we understand to be primarily engineering. So I suspect what you're seeing here is a large effort of MTA's internal engineering and negotiation staff to try and come up with what they think best works for how they think this platform is going to eventuate. So really, I'm not sure at this point if we can really sort of burden this applicant too much with holding them up to get the MTA in. By all means, I think if you reached out to the MTA, they certainly would be happy to talk to you about what their plans are for this particular station, from what they can tell you. But I mean, as far as what the scope of this process that you're looking at the moment, City Planning has said that the application is complete. I would have to correct Justin there to say that we have not endorsed the design because it's not the Department of City Planning's role to endorse the design. We just say the application is complete and we facilitate the negotiation with the Metropolitan Transit Authority, who expresses what their desires are for each individual property. So what you've seen up to now is the MTA saying, this is what we want here. How much of Community Board 6's, I guess, specific historical requests for that are involved, I'm not sure. You would have to ask the MTA. And City Planning has signed off and said this is complete and can enter public review. So I hope that answers your question. But ultimately, to get the MTA involved in this specific applicant's process, I don't think there is scope to do that given the timeline. And the fact that I guess that, sort of this applicant hadn't really had, the clarity of there being something to be applied to their site previously. Now there is, and the MTA has accordingly updated their plans for that. And this, I guess, for the community and for subway riders, is kind of a bonus to what was really envisaged previously.
Let me simplify my question. This station includes elevator, escalator, or stair access on the southwest corner. Is that correct? Hello?
I would have to refer to Justin's plan for that.
Yes, it is an elevator entrance.
I'm sorry. Again,
it is an elevator entrance.
Okay.
Is my microphone working?
Yes, we heard you. It's an elevator entrance.
It's an elevator, and it also has an escalator or stair entrance on the sidewalk on the southwest corner. That's a question.
No, this subway entrance on the development site we are proposing here is only going to have 2 ADA compliant elevators.
Right, but I'm asking about the corner, the street access corner, because somebody was talking about an escalator, and I wanted to find out whether it's servicing the same platform, but not from your property.
We haven't worked directly on that, but to our understanding, there will be an escalator on 34th accessing platform.
On the southwest corner. Okay, that's fair enough. That covers the ground I was trying to cover.
Okay, thank you, Lou. So it sounds like there's some questions around the MTA application, not so much the application of the actual station, not so much this application before us. So I'm just going to move on. Thank you, Lou. So Kathleen, you can unmute yourself and ask your question. And then I'm just going to remind everyone, we are not taking any sort of questions, substantive questions through chat. So please raise your hand if you have a question about procedure or a question of our speakers. Thank you. Kathleen?
Yeah, my question is that it doesn't kind of match the rest of the subway line that's already in existence for Second Avenue. Just that if it is approved, that it doesn't look like it was based on the foot traffic or the importance that it would hold, because it's like a transit hub, the development that's gone on 34th Street already, not even saying moving forward the next 20, 30 years. So it looks like to only have it almost looks like you'd have to say you lose your retail space in the bottom. You'd get a taller building to make up for losing loss of retail space, but you'd have to have more elevators than just 2.
This subway entrance with the elevators is planned at the moment to be complementary to the planned additional entryways that have been previously planned for this area. So this isn't, to our understanding and working with the Transportation Authority, this is to, which is why it hasn't been previously listed, this is to add on to available access, not to substitute.
And if I can add to the 1,200 square feet that I'm getting, it's not a real bonus. It's basically, when we design the building, you have something they call FIR. And the FIR for the building, from the FIR, the MTA took 1,200 square feet. They're basically telling me, go and use it anywhere else in the building where you can. I'm not getting an extra 1,200 square feet. I'm just moving the 1,200 square feet from the ground floor to somewhere else in the building. And that's what my architect and the DOB are working on to design.
So there's other elevators that will be in existence for that exit.
So sorry, I didn't hear well.
Yeah.
What was the question? I'm
Kathleen,
sorry.
can you repeat the question?
Right, when you look at 72nd Street, if you have 1 or 2 elevators that are out there, still others that are working, because it's in a medical corridor, plus the development that's gone on. That's why I'm just looking at it and saying, if there's 2 elevators there, are there another 2 elevators somewhere for that entrance? It just seems like they would need a bank of elevators to be able to make that efficient, and that the square footage, would have to go into the height of the building or configured somewhere else, but it looks like the retail space would be lost.
I really don't get involved in the MTA studies exactly where, but again, don't take my word. I think they were planning original for 2 elevators on the northwest corner. But again, I don't want to say something that I'm not 100% sure. There are a few studies over there on the table, and I don't want to speak in the MTA words, but they did a few studies. And don't forget, those studies are a little bit old. I'm sure when they will come to do the new train, the subway, I'm sure they will do another study. And the same way that they took the easement from us, any new development that will go into the area, they will take the easement and will use it for the MTA.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to move on. We have several other folks. So thank you, Kathleen. I'm going to move on. We have, I see Sandra McKee, Anne, Kathy, and then Jean, and then we'll wrap it up with Jim. I want to try to close this. So next we have Sandra.
And thank you for coming, but my understanding is this is really a transportation issue, and that once the subway, the full station has been developed, that they will come to us, probably to the transportation as well as to the land use committee, to investigate this further. And so, I mean, it's great that you're adding these elevators. I think it's going to be a big bonus to the entrance. And I really think we should move on because we will investigate this much further at another date.
Right. So thank you. That's a
So
very
there's
good
no
point.
question.
We're really just looking at the land use applications before us. We're not talking about a holistic plan for the MTA and the Second Avenue subway at this point. But I'm sure she's taken some notes of some of our concerns. So thank you, Sandra. So I think it was Kathy next. Just unmute yourself and ask your question.
Okay, can you hear me now?
We can.
Sandra beat me to it. What I was going to say was, let's don't get bogged down in MTA planning here. This is about the building, which happens to have some MTA effects within it, but it is not part of MTA planning. And so all the additional pieces that should go along with MTA planning doesn't necessarily apply to this application.
Okay, thank you. We'll leave it at that. We don't need to hear a response, so we'll move on. And did you have something you wanted to add beyond that?
I just wondered do they need a reso from us to go forward? Because there obviously is a timeline on this.
It would be customary for us to pass a resolution in favor or with comments and send it to the full board for adoption. Yes.
Do
you want to make a motion?
I would make a motion that we do a resolution of no objection, but include in it some of the issues, sort of, subject to the questions. Would like the MTA to make note of these, of the issues that have been raised here, something like that.
Okay. If anyone raises their hand, I'll take that as a second.
You have to raise your hand.
Lou, it looks like you raised your hand. Yep. Okay, I got it. So that's
one tiny additional comment, if I may.
Go ahead.
This neighborhood is in the process of radical change, and we, as a board, proposed the criteria for the 34th Street station a very substantial number of years ago. And this issue came back to us a couple of years ago, and we reiterated our position about the necessity of a subway platform. I think we have approached what we were attempting to accomplish at the time. And I think that this resolution, as we're starting to shape it, is probably a good way to go.
Okay, thank you.
It didn't mean to interrupt the vote on with the discussion.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Thank you, Lou. So I'm just gonna mute everyone. Okay, thank you. So Sandra, sorry. Did you have a question that you wanted to ask regarding the resolution, the motion before us to?
No, I was seconding it. I was seconding that we move forward.
Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna lower everyone's hands. If you have a question or want to debate it further, please raise your hand again. Give it a second. Okay, I don't see anyone else who wants to continue debate. Thank you very much. So let's go ahead and vote. We will take this vote via roll call. So we're going to vote on a motion of no objection for 609 Second Avenue. I don't have before me the two land use numbers, but we'll add that to the resolution, of course. So when your name is called for a vote, please unmute yourself and say aye, nay, you abstain, or abstain for cause. And I'm going to ask that our district manager please read out the roll.
Okay. All right. Jim Collins.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Adam Harkey.
Aye.
Thank you. Kathleen Kelly. Kathleen Kelly.
Sorry, nay.
Thank you. Kavitha Matthew.
Aye.
I'm sorry, can you repeat yourself, Kavitha?
Aye.
Okay, that's an aye, thank you. Sandra McKee.
4.
Okay, thank you. Wells Magali.
Wells was having some issues.
Yeah, so she may not have been able to rejoin us. Okay, so we'll skip her. Jean Santoro.
Jean?
Jean, you unmuted, but we didn't actually hear you. Can you try one more time? Or raise
Yeah.
your hand?
Yeah, we go.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yes, I'm for.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Larry Shire.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Ann Seligman.
Aye.
Thank you. Lou Sapersky.
Aye.
Thank you. Sandro Sherrod.
Aye.
Thank you. Letty Simon.
Aye.
Thank you. Kathy Thompson.
Aye.
Okay. And this motion carries 11 for, 1 against, no abstentions, no for cause.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Rostov, Mr. Marum, and Mr. Hamburger, even though you're real quiet. You're perfectly willing to stay with us if you want, or welcome to, I should say, if you're willing to do so, but you don't have to, but thank you. We'll put together a resolution and bring that forth to the full board meeting so that can be sent over for response to city planning.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sandra,
so the next, yep.
I'm offering to draft the resume.
Oh, excellent. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I'm having a little trouble typing these days, so I appreciate that.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate your time. Thank you, Sandra.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
All right.
Have a good night. Stay safe.
Thank you. So we will move on to our second item. And our second item was really an update on the capital projects throughout the district. And let me see who's actually, Jesus, did you keep track? I see we have someone from DDC
Yes,
and
Will
ADC.
Fisher
Yeah, hi, Will, how are you?
and Ophelia Rivas.
Good to see you. So maybe, we'll pivot at this point and let Will kind of lead us in a discussion. So obviously there's been a slowdown in work and some, both a dramatic need for open space because we're now kind of locked up in our inner confined spaces. But we'd also love to understand, what this means in terms of funding, in terms of projected timelines, and in some of our projects, for example, we had deadlines that we had to enact certain portions of federal funding by, or risk losing them. And it'd be great to know if those funds are still in danger or if our timelines are now at risk of not being completed on time. So thank you. Will?
Yeah, and I think Ophelia is here from DDC as well. Is that right?
Yep, it looks like it. Yep.
Thanks, Will. I am here.
So I can speak to East Midtown Greenway and Solar One, but for ESCR, I guess that would be Ophelia. Ophelia, would you prefer to go first?
Sure. Hi, everyone. For those who don't know me, my name is Ophelia Rivas. I'm from DDC Intergovernmental Affairs. I know you're usually used to our coastal resiliency team, Kiwamiri, but I'll be here on his behalf. So I'm happy to report. Thank you. I'm happy to report that ESCR has not been impacted by COVID-19 at all, whether it be timeline, the schedule, or the funding. The project is on schedule and advancing through procurement and contract specifications. It's going through the review phase. The project's substantial construction will commence this fall as planned. There will be no construction this spring since the city committed to deferring the relatively small early works package and relocation of the compost yard. So as everyone knows, we listened to the community and deferred the compost yard to the fall instead of this spring, which was supposed to happen already. But in terms of construction, it's still on for the fall. DDC is currently working on releasing an addenda to the Project Area 2 package. Project Area 1 package is currently under review by the legal team, which will soon be released to pre-qualified contractors. We'll keep the community board up to date before any information goes out, as well as the electeds. Additionally, the project team is advancing the parallel conveyance, which we had to work with Con Ed and DEP on that. And in terms of our website development and social media, It's going through the drafted stages. Nothing is complete yet. Again, once we advance further, we're going to share all the social media accounts, and we will continue to keep everyone updated on the specific timing of all the bid packages and any upcoming project developments as we progress.
Okay, thank you, Ophelia. That's good
Thank you.
news. Were there any questions from the committee regarding the report that Ophelia just gave us? Adam?
Hi, can you give us a status on the flyover? I know this was a concession that was sort of that we fought for last year. I know the funding, just the state of the funding and whatnot. Can you comment to that?
I will have to circle back on the status of the flyover bridge for the funding on that.
Great,
And
thanks.
I'll report back. Yeah, it's not a
Thank
problem.
you. Anyone else? Any questions? Raise your hand. Okay, I don't see any. All right, so thank you again, Ophelia. I guess we'll move back to Will.
Thank you.
Great, good
For your
evening, everybody. I hope everybody's doing well. It's nice to see all of you. Yeah, my name is Will Fisher from the New York City Economic Development Corporation. Yeah, so we have a couple of projects along the waterfront in the district that I just wanted to also give an update on. So going from south to north, in the Stuyvesant Cove area. So I just wanted to let everybody know that New York City Ferry continues to operate, albeit on a reduced schedule right now because ridership is significantly down right now, as you all can probably imagine. We've been working with DDC, and because of course a portion of the East Side Coastal Resiliency Project is taking place in Stuyvesant Cove Park, which is a property that EDC manages jointly with Solar One. So we're working closely with DDC on coordination there. Additionally, Adam, you mentioned that one of the items that came up in the ULERT points of agreement for that project was the flyover bridge. Another one was additional funding for the new Solar One building, Solar 2 in that area that EDC is managing the design and construction of on Solar One's behalf to create a new facility in that park for their educational programming. So unfortunately that project has been on pause. At EDC, we are doing quite a bit on the COVID response. So we're working quite a lot with local manufacturers to, essentially help pivot existing manufacturers in the city from whatever it is that they normally create to making personal protective equipment for first responders and frontline workers, to making bridge ventilators at a facility in Queens, to making testing kits and that kind of thing. So while EDC is spending significantly from a cash flow perspective on the emergency response, we're putting a pause on design work for projects such as Solar One. So we hope to be back at that soon. So going farther north, the ferry terminal at East 34th Street, like I said, still operational. And I should mention as well that the Sty Cove Ferry, DDC is, we've been working with DDC and we'll be keeping that ferry station operational during construction down there. At the other end of Community Board 6, at the northern end, EDC began work in, I believe it was November, on the East Midtown Greenway, which would connect East 54th Street to Andrew Haswell Green Park at East 61st Street. So that, like I said, we have paused design work in-house with consultants at this time, but since that project was already in construction, that one is rather under the jurisdiction of the governor's executive order to pause all non-essential construction. Just like Ophelia said, that's not to say anything for what the long-term trajectory of the project is. The project will proceed once that executive order is lifted. And the work largely right now is that they were working on was demolition of some old concrete work and platforms up right beneath the Queensboro Bridge at Andrew Haswell Green, and then some in-water work related to removing the old ODR piles and beginning to prep for installation of new piles. So again, that work has been paused. I guess it's probably been since late March at this point, and we look forward to getting back to work on that soon as well.
Okay. There are a couple of hands I see raised. Let's start with Adam, and then we'll follow with Sandra and Larry.
Sure. This question might be for Ophelia, but Will, you brought up that there were two sort of projects that were paused. Part of the larger ESCR mitigation was sort of planning for the waterside pier. We reached out to Parks. We never really got sort of confirmation as what they were sort of planning or what the status of that sort of aspect was. But our understanding prior to all this is that they were supposed to continue planning and then sort of begin construction sometime in the summer. Would either of you have any comment as to where that potentially rests? Is that also on pause, or is that potentially moving forward?
So I can speak to that. So in terms of construction being in the spring, that's what you mean? Like that was the early bid package, which was tree transplants and the compost yard.
No. That's not for tree transplants. It's for the waterside pier north of 34th Street.
Okay.
It was supposed to be, basically that was in the wheelhouse within Parks. This is part of their larger mitigation efforts in terms of, us losing waterfront space for a while. They were supposed to plan and then I think they were supposed to basically do everything for the most part. And correct me if I'm wrong, but.
The park was supposed to report back with a waterfront space plan for you. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, not just report back. I mean, they were supposed to, the last that we spoke to them, they were actually supposed to finish their design and then start doing in the summer. And so we've tried to reach out to them and they never clarified a real response.
Okay, so I can follow up with Parks tomorrow and
Okay,
get
great.
clarity.
Thank you.
And ask them to reach out to the community board that you're, looking for that response. That's not a problem. I'll do that for you.
Appreciate
Thank you
it. Thank
very
you.
much.
And then just to the point on pause project, I should just clarify that the guidance I just gave regarding pause projects it may be the case for other city agencies, but was just to speak for EDC, just since we do have a role right now in the response. So it may not be the same case everywhere. That's all. Thanks.
Okay. So I think Sandra, and then we'll follow with Larry, and then Jim.
I think you mentioned that Solar 2 was a DDC project. I'm just wondering what phase they were in when they were paused.
Yeah, so we've been working with Chris and the Solar 1 team, as folks probably know for a couple of years here. There were, because of it's a quite complex site, as you can imagine, the waterfront site and needing to elevate the building, as well as the unique requirements of the organization. And essentially the bids came in well over budget for the initial design that we bid out. And that was, I think that was late last year. So we are working on a redesign of the project and some value engineering to the project. But additionally got additional funding thanks to Councilmember Keith Powers' advocacy during the ULIP negotiation process. So the project is in design. I would say we're probably going to be coming back to the community board later this year with updates on that, provided that we can get design back up and running in the next couple of months.
Good. Okay. So Larry was next.
Sorry, it's the second question.
Sure.
Oh, it's totally unrelated. But I know we've been talking about trying to close streets and especially now once we're starting with the ERC work. Do you know how that is proceeding? If there's an alternate route for recreational space within the community once the construction starts? It may be more Ophelia's question than
it might be, yeah.
Yeah, so for ESCR, we definitely, that's why we listened to the community and we placed the phasing plan. The phasing plan is still in place, so the park will not be closed fully. It will always remain partially open. The phasing plan is still in, and then we're gonna work with DOT in terms of like traffic, and we're gonna look into like the bike impact. So yeah, but we have to get the contractor on board first to get that plan. And once we get closer on getting the contractors, we can work on that and share it with the community.
I mean, we have proposals to close a lane in certain streets, which seems like a very viable proposal now, especially with reduced traffic. So is maybe something that the contractor does not have to participate in?
So right now with the closures, we can't, it's too soon to tell. So we can't commit to anything right now. And then who knows, right now the city is relatively quiet because of COVID and things are closed off, but we don't know down the line if things will resume normally or it'll stay the same. So it's too soon to tell, but the closer we get to having a clearer idea, we will report back.
That's why we thought if we got in there first, we could maintain it through the change that's going to be happening. But see what you can do. And now.
Yes, I hear you. Thank you.
All right, so we'll move on to Larry.
Hi, Will, this project, as it was described to us last, was a well-coordinated drill, including the construction of the new Solar One building. And I am worried that this will throw a monkey wrench into the works. How far along in the design are you so that when the design picks up again, how much time is going to be needed to get to the point where you could have the construction start? Because if you're not done with the design, you can't bid it.
Yeah, of course. And I think I would say that, Larry, it's a good question. I think it is obviously with footprints overlapping between the ESCR project and with Solar One, there are some challenges here. I think, like I said, there was a significant issue with the bids coming in too high during the last round of bidding that was in the fall for the previous design. So they were significant enough that we are, like I said, undergoing some redesign efforts. So unfortunately, we have essentially restarted design from, I would say probably in January, working very closely with Solar One and their board and Chris. But I think what we essentially want to do is, my best understanding from the construction team, and I'm not a construction expert, but is to remove a lot of the design flourishes and sort of extra pieces that were accessory to what Solar One's program needs are. So basically, classrooms, education space, a gathering space. Having to construct the building right on the waterfront there, obviously being compliant with all of the FEMA guidelines regarding elevation. It was quite a lot of concrete work. It was quite a lot of piling. It was overbuilt, overdesigned. So we are pretty early in the design process right now. I think, like I said, because EDC is sort of repositioned to focus on the emergency response right now. It's difficult to say when exactly design will resume, but I would say we probably have, there's a number of months ahead on design. And I think, our priority is to ensure that we're not holding up any other project as part of this, which I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seemed like that was where your question was going, because obviously with the project sharing a footprint, it's important to be coordinated there, but we want to make sure that this doesn't stop the key resiliency measures from getting put in place, even if we need to move things around a little bit on the schedule for the Solar One project.
Right.
So a wall would be built even without Solar One? Is that what you're envisioning here? Because you're saying you're very early in the design.
Yeah, so I mean, we've coordinated closely with DDC, and there's in that section, I know there's a landscaped berm. I'm not as familiar with the ESCR component as Ophelia is, I'm sure, but we're in doing the redesign work, we are staying coordinated with them.
Yeah, because I would hate to see the resiliency be put on hold because you can't finish this design.
No, this project won't stand in the way of that project being implemented.
Okay, good to know. Thank you. Let's move to our last question. Jim?
Hi, good evening, Ms. Rivas and Mr. Fisher. Given the fiscal restraints the city is going to have in the next several years, presumably, does the city or does EDC have any method of prioritizing the capital projects that are on hold right now? And is there anything the community board can do to affect that as through, for example, our budget priorities? And the second question I had for Ms. Rivas, presumably, is are we dealing with our elected representatives to get extensions on some of those time-sensitive budget matters? Are we reaching out, and are they seeing hope that they can extend the time for them? I guess Mr. Fisher.
You want me to go first?
Yeah, why don't you go first?
Okay. So in terms of the funding, we are already committed to the funding. There is no delay in the funding because our consultants are still working every day. There's no pause in the design or construction. There's no impact at all. So we will make the funding timeline in terms of the federal funding. And we are committed to it. And we have been speaking to the elected officials closely and updating them on the project, and they're working with us in tandem. So in terms of that, it's fine. Like, we don't have any issues and there's no impact. Okay. We were lucky because there were other projects like in Brooklyn and in Queens, resiliency projects that are in fact on pause. So we got lucky with ESCR.
Is that because they were already in the construction phase and work was affected, or design?
No, actually, they're in the design phase. Yeah, they're in design. They're in the design phase. Yeah.
And
Will?
I guess Mr. Fisher on the first question.
Yeah, of course. So I think
Just to refresh, it's to
no, the prioritization and
right
and all that, right? It's a good question. I think it's on a lot of folks' mind. I mean, it's no secret that this is going to be a challenge. I think everyone probably saw that the mayor currently the city's projecting a $7 billion deficit between fiscal years in 21, and it's an enormous challenge. But I think at this point, what EDC has done within our own agency, again, not to speak for any other agency, since we are working with local manufacturers to try to put together a lot of the materials that first responders are using to respond to this crisis, we are putting sort of design and consultant spending on hold while we reposition our financial resources like that now. I think that's not to speak, however, for any forward-looking allocation of funding between various capital projects or various programs. I think quite frankly, it's too early to tell on that. So as for now, we are obviously complying with the executive order regarding construction stoppages and pausing consultant work where we can on design for projects. But I think the administration and city council are obviously discussing the budget right now. And then I think the priority for us is really to sort of get over this hump and once we begin to see the COVID numbers decline, like really, I think in a few months, I think the city will better understand sort of what the position is. But as of now, there's no specific project impacts that we've identified.
Okay, good to know. All right, thank you. Are there any other questions from either the committee or the members of the public that have joined us? If you want to raise your hand, just click on participants and then click raise hand, but it sounds like we're out of questions. I don't see any other questions, so thank you very much, Ophelia. Thank you, Will, for joining us. This has been very informative and mostly good news. It's good to know that the projects that are safeguarding and opening up our spaces are not going to be significantly delayed, because these are projects that have been on the forefront of our minds for many years now, and we're looking forward to seeing them move along. So thank you both.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for inviting us. Hope everybody's doing well.
Yep.
Here.
All right. Thank you. All right, so with that, let's continue on down our agenda. The next item, I believe, was actually the chair's report. I'm just gonna, just give a quick, I hope everyone's doing well. It's nice to see so many of your faces and hear you again. Strange not being able to see you in person, of course, but this seems to be working very well. So thank you for helping the continuance of local governance, as well as your always valuable input. I do appreciate that. And so with that, I know that we had two items that Lou wanted to discuss under old business. The first one being the Greenway. So Lou, maybe you can unmute yourself and we can talk about the Greenway for a few minutes. And then the second one, for everyone's recollection, or if you joined late, was the helicopter task force. And I think also, while I see you're unmuted, but I just wanted to acknowledge Connor Allerton, who is the urban planner assigned to Community Board 6 from the Borough President's Office, is also in attendance. So thank you for joining us, Connor. Actually.
Hi everyone.
Hi.
Nice to be here. Just yeah, I think I just started the position, but I'm happy to get involved in all the work that you guys are doing. And yeah, it's good to be here. I look forward to representing the community board for the borough president, and feel free to reach out to me with any questions or concerns or requests you have moving forward.
Thank you for joining us.
I'll circulate my email. It's also on the borough president's website, but I can maybe send it over to one of you to circulate.
Sure. Yeah, you can just let Jesus or Cody know, and we'll make sure that the committee has it. Thank you very much, Connor. All right, so Lou, do you want to start with the Greenway?
What happened to the caissons that had been installed as the reliever road for the rehabilitation of the Franklin Roosevelt Drive? The west line of caissons was to be left there for the construction of the Greenway. And about 6 or 8 weeks ago, they disappeared.
Yeah, I think Will might have addressed that. I know we addressed that at the last meeting. It was determined by the city and the team actually working on the Greenway project that the existing caissons were not necessary or not in the right condition, and they are putting different supports in. So I believe they were removed several weeks back, as you point out.
Why wasn't the board notified when the
I don't know what that means. Sandra's doing like a 3. Is that Sandra? Did you want to chime in?
Sandra, go ahead.
Sandra?
There are 3 remaining.
There's 3 remaining from the original.
They were gone.
Remain.
After you and I inspected them again, those 3 caissons were also removed. So they're gone.
I was there. I was there on the weekend. They're there.
Yeah. This
Low tide.
Recently? No,
last weekend.
I didn't see them when I looked, but it's possible they're still there because I didn't have a good vantage point.
Low tide.
But
so
yeah, check at low tide.
But the
we did get confirmation, Lou, that they were not necessary for the project to go forward. We asked for a response on that.
My question is, why weren't we involved in the discussions from the start? Because when the original caissons were left in place, they were reinforced with rebars and concrete, and the state DOT at the time said that they would probably last 100 years. So I'm curious as to what has happened in the interim to make the decision without consultation with the board or letting us know what happened.
Well, I mean, I don't have an answer for that other than say that I would imagine that the design that they reviewed with us has not changed. So any supporting engineering work to support that design, they felt was covered. I mean, it doesn't mean to say that it was or wasn't, but the design has not changed and the engineering that supports it. So,
well, it's questions that I think hopefully the board would like answered as to what happened and why. because it's a project with which the board has been involved since forever, practically.
Right. Well, we did pose the questions, and they said that they weren't necessary.
Who posed the question and where and what?
I actually going to have to rely on someone. I don't have it in front of me. I don't know. Jesus,
Sandra,
do you have? Yep. Do you have it?
When we were notified of this concern, we did reach out to Will Fisher, and he answered the questions.
I can't hear you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Louder, please.
Oh, yes, when we were made aware of your concerns, the office reached out to Will Fisher. Will Fisher provided us with a response, and we relayed that response to you, Lou, and also to the board chair, and I believe the board chair spoke with you about this as well.
No, the response was we decided that they weren't in good condition. When the determination was made that they were in perhaps failing, why wasn't the board notified about the change of plans and be involved as we ought in the evolution of what new design or new effort is going to be used for the Greenway?
Okay, I don't think there's
I
anyone who can answer that question at this point. Yeah.
Well, the point is that we as a board should have been involved from day one, not being.
Well, I would agree. I mean, we're normally involved in design and high level policy level decisions. I mean, I don't think we're necessarily designing on the micro level of where something is 2 inches to the right or 2 inches to the left. So I don't think it would be normal for them to necessarily identify that. But in this case, you are right that this is something that we had been focusing on for a while, and having a little bit more feedback would have been helpful. I would agree with that. So unless there's something else, because I don't think we have an answer for the Greenway issue.
Perhaps we ought to ask EDC why that process was followed, so that we're not excluded from other principal decisions made with the Greenway. There was a conference held about a year ago on what was going to be on the Greenway and its arrangement and the recreation areas and viewing areas and all kinds of stuff like that.
Right.
Predicated on the existence of those caissons. So I don't think that we as a board should be left behind in the future on the evolution of the Greenway plan, and that seems to be what's happened.
Okay. Okay. So noted. We'll take those comments back when we have those conversations with EDC and other parties. All right, so let's move to your second item, which was the helicopter task force.
Now, what's the story with the helicopter task force? There is
I don't know what you mean by what's the story.
Is there a helicopter task force?
I don't believe they're actively meeting. I don't know if Connor or if Jesus knows.
We do have two representatives in the Borough President's office, Connor and Brian Lafferty. I can enable them to
Brian's here,
talk
good.
maybe.
Yes, please. I don't know if they have any updates, if they know. Brian, Connor, yep, go right ahead, Brian.
Hi, this is Brian Lafferty. Thanks for inquiring about it. We've been in the process of trying to schedule the next meeting of the task force, and I'll certainly circulate the information for that once I have it. But they did meet, I believe, was in the fall. So we're due for another meeting in the near future. Sorry, I don't have any more specifics at this point, but I hope to. Sorry, what's that, Lou?
Was Board 6 represented at the helicopter task force?
Yes, Molly was there.
Uh-huh. All right.
Is it the last meeting you're referring to?
Yes,
The only meeting so far.
right. So far, there was,
Was there only one? I thought
meeting,
there was a
but,
second one.
We should have.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
No, not yet.
Okay. All right. So thank you. And I see there's a hand up, Letty.
Can agendas of this helicopter task force be circulated?
Lou, hold on. Hold on. I called on Letty. 1 second.
All right,
Letty?
go.
Letty, you have to unmute yourself. We can't hear you. Letty, are you able to unmute
Well,
yourself? There we
it
go.
was just a brief prior question. It was just some understanding. Were the caissons removed? That was pretty much an engineering decision, not a design decision.
That's what we were informed, that they were not in the condition
Thank
required.
you.
Yeah, we heard that. Yeah.
Thank you.
And
So it was an
they didn't
engineering
change.
decision.
Correct, and it didn't change the design or the affected design that they're
design.
looking to. Right. That was a
Okay,
response
so
we
it's
got.
not such a heinous thing that we learned. Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Letty. All right, so Lou, I think you had one last question, and I'm just gonna, if anyone has a question, please raise your hand now because it's getting a little late. Lou, you seem to have muted yourself.
Am I muted?
Not anymore.
Good. Can we get copies of the helicopter task force agendas as things move along? That's of some considerable interest to the board.
Sure. So I guess once they actually start meeting again, yeah, we'll send that to the board, to the committee members as well, once that gets scheduled again. Okay, thank you, Lou.
Yep.
Okay, thank you, Brian.
Absolutely.
So anyone else, does anyone else have any, okay, thank you, Brian. Does anyone else have any old or new business? If you do, please raise your hand. Okay, hearing none. I don't see any hands. So I am going to ask for a motion to adjourn. Can you please unmute yourself if you want to make a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
So moved. Letty
Second.
is making a second, I see. Okay, thank you. So since we have no further business, I think we are going to adjourn here at 9 minutes past 8. So I just want to thank everyone for participating today. And I look forward to seeing your faces again in a Zoom meeting in the near future and hopefully in the not so distant future in person again. So thank you all. Have a good evening.
Stay well.
Thanks, Sandro. And hope to see everybody soon.
Okay, take care.
What committee was this?